What's up, guys? So Texas has passed a law set to go into effect September 1st that will require all classrooms in public schools to display a copy of the Ten Commandments from the Judeo-Christian literature. So I want to talk about this and how we got here, and a very specific vantage on it. But first and foremost, patreon.com/JordanOwen42 if you aren't already signed up to help me support the channel, help me grow it, and bring you lots of cool new stuff. My JO42 reviews segments are making a comeback, and so there's that, and there's going to be more cool stuff coming down the pipe. I've learned not to announce things until they're at least 75% done, but one of the big projects I've been working on quietly in the background for actually a couple of years is hopefully going to come to fruition in the next little bit. So anyway, getting back to the point. I am, yes, a Christian, but I am totally opposed to having the Ten Commandments in schools, because it is not just pushing one specific religion in a country where we have a very firm separation of church and state. It is also it also furthers the capacity of a very specific group of people to further their social agenda that's derived from their interpretation of Christianity. This is 100% on this initiative is 100% on the side of Christian nationalist conservatives, and I am sorry, but try as you might, this is not a country founded on Christian values, and it is Christian values in the United States are something that you can take on by choice, accept by choice, and interpret for yourself by choice. And it amazes me that there are actually thought leaders out there that will push the idea of this being a Christian nation with, you have people like Michael Knowles who will actually tell you that the founders of the country were Christian, and then he starts talking about the pilgrims that came over on the Mayflower, and who were not. The pilgrims who came over on the Mayflower were not the founders of this country. That is equally as absurd as saying that the country was founded in 1619 with the arrival of the first slave. Neither one of those circumstances were the founding of this country. The country was founded in 1776. Mitzi says hi, but now she's going to go chase a wadded up grocery receipt. Anyway, this country was founded in 1776, and neither one of those sides are correct. But that comparison, that dichotomy, brings up something very, very important to understand, and that is, people come to me and they say, well, Jordan, if you're anti-woke, why are you not pro-Trump? Which is like being anti-AIDS and wanting to know why I'm not pro-cancer. It's like these are both problems. The thing is, fundamentally, we have gotten so, we've kind of perverted and bastardized the concept of checks and balances in this country to the point that we think that it's the job of the left to show up every 4 to 8 years and kick the right in the balls, and it's the job of the right to show up every 4 to 8 years and kick the left in the balls. And and that is not it. We are supposed to balance. It's supposed to be a balancing, stabilizing force. It's supposed to promote stability across fundamentally two different concepts of governance, which is authoritarianism and libertarianism. I don't mean the Libertarian Party. I mean authoritarian, meaning power derived from the force of the state, and libertarian, meaning power derived from the consent of the governed. And so it's meant to stabilize both of those forces, and to such a degree that neither one overwhelms or overpowers the other, and people are able to live their own lives independently. And when you talk about MAGA and Trump, you have to understand something. MAGA is not anti-woke. They're just pushing their own version of woke, bringing it back around to the person who is. Nicole Hannah-Jones is wrong to say that the country was founded in 1619, and I know you're going to try to come to me and say, oh, she actually changed her opinion and said that that was only a thought experiment, blah, blah, blah. Bull fucking shit. Until she got enough push, she changed her position once she got enough pushback, and even then she didn't really change the position, because she said that she acknowledged, she said, we, the creators of the 1619 Project, we acknowledge that the country celebrates its founding in 1776. That is not correct. The country was founded in 1776. We celebrate our founding once a year on the 4th of July. But anyway, but that idea, the idea that 1619 was the founding of the country, is just as wrong as saying that the Pilgrims founded the country. Both of these groups are wrong. They are both pushing their own versions of woke, which is ridiculous, untrue, radical ideas that serve to benefit a lunatic fringe and not the 98% of people in the middle that are just trying to live and enjoy their lives and function in the world. And so we have to ask ourselves how we got here and what's going on here. And it probably doesn't look like, to someone, if you're left-leaning, it probably doesn't look like the MAGA and the woke are just two sides of the same coin. It probably doesn't look like that to you, because MAGA has institutional fortification. This goes back not just to attitudes. I cut my finger earlier, if you're wondering about the blood. Anyway, it goes back to not just to Reagan, but back to Nixon, back to Strom Thurmond, back to conservatives being butthurt about the New Deal, back to conservatives, which, yes, they would have been the Democrats at the time, but still conservatives being butthurt about having to give up their slaves, about losing the Civil War, being butthurt about having to become a new independent country free of the British monarchy. It goes back centuries just centuries and centuries of butthurt, and those centuries and centuries of butthurt are buttressed by a very I will admit, very poetically written and well-worded fantasy land that a lot of them live in, called Gone with the Wind. Most of this is a side tangent, but so much of the problem that we have with all of this Confederate pride crap and, all that South will rise again bullshit, and this very this very utopian, beautiful vision that so many people have of the antebellum Southern United States, that's not the reality of what life was like during that time period. That is people reading Gone with the Wind and getting stuck in Gone with the Wind cosplay. That's all it is. Trying to learn about the Southern United States pre-Civil War and during, and after Civil War. Trying to learn about that whole time period by reading Gone with the Wind is like trying to learn about medieval Europe by reading Lord of the Rings. It is a complete work of fantasy. Anyway, but this goes back decades, and it doesn't look and so I think to the person that's looking at it thinking, well, this MAGA thing is very much an outgrowth of the institution. It's the GOP, the establishment, kind of fully metastasizing. And you have to understand, because it's the establishment, this thing has been allowed to exist in the background for a long, long time. I mentioned Frank Zappa recently in one of my videos. I watched an interview of his on, I think, Crossfire. I think it was with the one with Robert Novak hosting. But something, I think, on CNN, where he was calling out Christian nationalism back in the United States and the effect that would have eventually. And now in the second Trump administration, that's become a fucking prophecy. And I would love to, when we see those lists of those memes that say you can only bring back one, and it's Freddie Mercury, Kurt Cobain, now Ozzy Osbourne, all the great ones we've lost. God, I would love to bring Frank back, man. If he could, I mean, he'd be like in his 90s at this point, but even so, it would be incredible, or almost in his 90s, I think, at this point. It would be incredible to have him be able to comment. You know, he's one of those people like Kurt Vonnegut or George Carlin, where it's just like, or Bill Hicks, like, we just need these people to talk about reality and distill reality for us right now. Anyway, but he was sounding that warning for a long, long time. And woke, what we now call woke, is very different because it doesn't feel establishment. It feels like if you disagree with this thing, with the MAGA thing over here, you should be then you ought to be anti-establishment, and this woke thing is fundamentally anti-establishment. No, it is still establishment. It just has not been around as long. And the thing is, you know, conservative critics of wokeism will want to point to things like feminism, Marxism, postmodernism, and all of those ideas are certainly not foolproof. There are things within them. If I were to pick them all apart, I would be able to identify things within them that I agree with, things within them that I disagree with. You know, that kind of thing. All of those ideas, they have some things, some ideas to bring to the table, and some bad ideas to bring to the table. A certain amount of gold and a certain amount of lead, if you will. But the thing is that whether you agree with those ideas or not, the simple reality is that postmodernism has existed for close to 100 years. Feminism has existed in some capacity for more than 100 years. Marxism has absolutely existed in some capacity for more than 100 years. And those ideas have kind of danced around on the fringes. Occasionally they come towards the center a little bit, you know, more or less. And then, you know, certainly usually what happens is, as I was talking about, you know, the more moderate voices distill the ideas down into practical things that we can make use of, and you know, practical ideas that we can make use of. It's kind of like you know, I mentioned Andrea Dworkin and her ridiculous idea that men and women should stop having penetrative intercourse because penetrative penis and vagina sex is inherently abusive and humiliating for women, and it's inherently, you know, sexual abuse and all that crap. It's like, we're not going to adopt that. That's ridiculous. That's outside. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. We can of course can and should of course adopt things like women having paid maternity leave, and women having reproductive health care access, and women having the right to vote, and having the right to own their own property, and that kind of thing, and all of those things. Those ideas are useful, and that's what happens in that's kind of bringing it back around to my initial point. That's what's supposed to happen if this country is working properly, is you have a one wing that represents the establishment that says, okay, what do we stand to lose if we take on the new idea? What are the unintended consequences? What's good about the current standard that we need to hold on to? And these are the people that, yes, it's their job to say that if they decide that the new idea is 100% reprehensible to the existing standard, then yes, it is their job to argue against it 100%. But that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to weigh the new idea against the existing standard, and this other side is supposed to present the new idea and advocate for the new idea. And yes, if they feel that the new idea is 100% better than the existing establishment, advocate at that point. But their goal is ultimately to come to a middle ground consensus. And that's what Mitzi says hi again. That's what it's ultimately supposed to be. And so what's happened more recently, bringing it back to where we got here with woke, you know, again, the conservatives want to blame feminism and postmodernism and all of that, and I'm not to say that, and again, I'm not saying that there have not been toxic bad ideas that we can throw out, you know, the bathwater that we can throw out without throwing out the baby, obviously. But fundamentally, the reason woke has emerged now is that boomer parents, I feel, is that boomer parents decided to raise an entire generation of Cayuse, and right towards, and this is my generation, the millennials, and right at the end of the right at the end of the second uh, W. Bush administration, second W. Bush term, going into the Obama years, all of the Obama years, that generation started graduating from college. And that generation, the millennial generation, because boomer parents raised an entire generation of Cayuse, decided that they really took to. They really took to that college activist thing that people get. It's kind of a rite of passage. You get hooked on being an activist in college, and then you grow up and get out in the world. And maybe 5% of the people who got really hooked on that college activism thing are able to parlay that into a career, and everybody else has to grow up and get a job. And hi, Mitzi. And what happened was that college activism thing really caught on with this generation of Cayuse, and they went out into the world and they decided that they were going to start bopping people on the nose. And they spent 8 years of the Obama administration bopping people on the nose for things that seemed completely benign, and things that most people were totally, most people did not consider the great shortfalls of Western culture, like they were being portrayed to people. But I don't have to go through a laundry list of the kind of things I'm talking about. We've all, everybody's at some point been on the receiving end of woke ideas where someone shows up and they think it's their job to start bopping you on the nose about the fact that you felt happy and cheerful about something, And so, to go back to my most recent video, I did 2 videos on asking the question, why don't rockers sing about sex anymore? And it's because when the generation of Cayuse came out, they launched one of their many campaigns that they launched was many being M-A-N-Y, not M-I-N-I. One of their many campaigns that they launched was a campaign on sexuality, and specifically to heterosexual men, basically presenting this argument. They presented the argument of, okay, for generations, for decade after decade, the social conservative right wing of this country has told you that you should feel ashamed for in appreciating the sight of a beautiful naked woman because because God does not approve, and because it's destroying the moral fiber of our country, and think of the children. For some reason, I'd rather focus on adult naked women, thank you. But anyway, all of those old bromides, they said, all those old bromides are gone. We're throwing all that out. So we're liberating you from that. Here's a new list of reasons why it's morally wrong to enjoy the sight of a naked woman. Now you can, I'm not pointing to the right when I'm talking about the left. Now you can do all of our cool new progressive reasons for feeling guilty about looking at the sight of a naked woman. Now you can feel guilty about looking at the sight of a naked woman because the women you're looking at were forced to do exploited labor because of the patriarchal substrates of capitalism. Because you're objectifying women, because you're viewing them as subhuman. I bet you didn't know that. I didn't know that. I thought I was only sexually attracted to human beings and would not be interested in women at all if they weren't. Sexually interested in human beings at all if they were not human. I mean, this is a non-human female, and I'm not sexually attracted to it at all. You heard me? Yeah, I know. Sorry. Anyway, but all of that. So it comes. Now it's a new thing, and again, that's not. All of those ideas I just described are not things that began with wokeism in the early to mid 2000s, when Generation Caillou graduated from college and went out into the world. Those things didn't begin with that, but they metastasized with it. Again, like I said, these have always been ideas that have percolated on the lunatic fringe, but Generation Caillou decided they were going to be mainstream. And consequently, they do that. That's going back to my point. now instead of thinking I should not look at I should not enjoy the sight of a beautiful naked woman because God will rain down fire and brimstone upon me. Now I should think I should not enjoy the sight of a beautiful naked woman because of progressive Marxist-leaning ideas about exploited labor under capitalism and objectification. The and what these ideas, both of these groups think if you're not doing that thing you want to do for our reason, the world is now a better place. And consequently, people don't have a viable reason to get with the progressive idea, the new standard, get with forward-thinking ideas. People will default naturally to conservative ideas because, let's be honest, it means they don't have to do anything. It means sticking with what's already the machine that's already puttering along. It means they don't have to get involved. They don't have to go out and ring doorbells and shake hands and lick envelopes and do all of that, do all of that stuff, or shake envelopes and lick doorbells, or whatever whatever the campaigning has to has to have them doing. They're going to default to that. They're going to default to what's already up and running, and to a certain extent logically so. And that is what MAGA knows, and that is what MAGA exploits. But fundamentally, these are the same same extremes. So we have to stop at that point, or sorry, we are the same outcomes going to two different extremes, is what I should say. It's the same outcome. Fundamentally, we have to stop and ask ourselves, why is it impossible? Why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult when Donald Trump, there's a meme, there was a meme I saw of it's the picture from The Simpsons of Lisa Simpson staring at the dinner table with her eyes wide and her mouth hanging open, and the caption, this was during the Trump-Kamala campaigns, and it says, the rest of the world watching America try to choose between a career politician and a career criminal with the IQ of a spoon. And yes, it's the most obvious thing in the world. And like I keep saying, if you haven't figured out what's wrong with what's happening right now, you're not paying attention. So why is it that Americans keep voting themselves into this increasingly imperialistic Christian nationalist shithole that these people are pushing? And again, yes, I am a Christian, but if you cannot understand why I am a Christian that does not want to live in Gilead from The Handmaid's Tale, I don't know. I may not be able to help you at this point if that's not intuitively obvious. Anyway, but you have to understand what it is that fundamentally that motivates people. And I'll give you a very specific. I mentioned earlier that what the left, what the millennials, Generation Caillou, did was they went and they graduated from college, and for 8 years of the Obama administration, this was not Obama's fault, by the way. I voted for the man and I was proud to do it. But for 8 years of the Obama administration, they sat there bopping people on the nose, over and over again, bopping people on the nose, bopping them on the nose for being white, bopping them on the nose for being male, bopping them on the nose for being Christian, bopping them on the nose for being straight, bopping them on the nose for anything that had any vague structural resemblance to their enemies on the right. Why do I keep pointing to the left when I'm talking? Anything that had any structural resemblance to the people that they hated, they started bopping them on the nose. And a lot of the time, I think they don't realize that bopping them on the nose is what they're doing. I'll give you a great example of that. And I'll show you the subtle nuances of what I'm talking about, because I'm about to describe something I agree with that has had this effect, the effect of bopping people on the nose. Okay, a few years ago, the AP Style Guide adopted the idea that was put forth by a number of linguistics professors and professors of cultural studies and that kind of thing, which said that when you are writing and you use words like black people or black culture, you should capitalize the B in black. You should not, however, capitalize the W in white for white people, white culture, white this, that kind of thing. Now, here is the reason for that. Black and white, in our popular discourse, black and white are the only, really the only racial terms that do not have a continental origin. Yes, we say brown people, but that still is relatively amorphous compared to black people. If you say brown people, for example, you can be referring to Hispanic people, to Indian people. These are very widely removed cultures. When you say black people, though, what you're talking about is black people people of African origin, of Nubian descent, that live in the United States and are the direct descendants of people who came over as slaves. Now, here's the reason you capitalize the B in black people in that terminology, because every other culture, Hispanic, Asian, European, Caucasian, use those terms, these are all ethnic indicators derived from continental origin. The problem now, the thing is, black people, the concept of blackness, black people as a group, is that when black people were brought over to the United States as slaves, they lost their continental origin, the subgroup of their continental origin. They don't know, because those logs, those records were not kept, they don't know what part of Africa they're from. So whereas a white person, white people don't celebrate a unified white culture outside of hate groups. They don't celebrate a unified white culture. They celebrate their Irish heritage, or they celebrate their German heritage, French heritage, Scandinavian heritage, what have you. They celebrate a specific subgroup of the larger European ethno-group that they're a part of. So because of that, because there is not this socio-cultural origin to the term white people, it literally just exists as a contrary to the concept of black people, you would not capitalize it as referring to a specific unified group in the same way that you would capitalize the B in black people. You would correctly capitalize European, Caucasian, etc. You would not capitalize white. Okay, stop a minute. I agree with that. I agree with that. 100%. I agree with every part of that. That follows logically, that follows structurally, logically, historically, grammatically, everything. That fits correctly. I 100% agree with that. However, there's something very important that you have to understand. And by the way, I'm not campaigning to change it. I will continue to go along with the AP Style Guide and capitalize the B and lowercase the W, and I have a problem with that. But there's something you have to understand, and that is that the common man, the common woman, does not have a background in linguistics, does not have a background in cultural studies, does not have a background in in collegiate levels of grammar and language arts and things like that, all of the things necessary to correctly arrive at that conclusion. They don't have that. All they hear when you say that they're going to capitalize the B and lowercase the W, all they hear is "fuck you, Whitey," and they go vote for Donald Trump. And that's what I'm talking about. They don't I think a lot of times the progressive side of things does not realize that they're doing this, that they're bopping people on the nose. And I don't think they intended to in that case. I really don't. But you could have, if they had wanted to take that into consideration, Uh, if they wanted to take that important reality into consideration, they could have done one of two things as I see it. One, they could have just gone along with the W to give give a capital W so everybody gets a capital and no one's complaining and we move on. That's one option. The other option would have been to say that white people, black people, those two groups uniquely will both get a lowercase letter because the standard should be that we only capitalize ethnicity when it refers to continental origin. So those are two options that would have kept everybody, everybody on the same playfield. It would not have communicated "fuck you, whitey," and it might. But at the same time, you have to now weigh the question of: are people going to say? Are they going to turn around and feel like black people have black people feel like "fuck you" is being said to them? That's a possibility at that point, but again, it's a thing of like, well, we're doing it, we're keeping it equal between the two groups where this terminology uniquely applies. And it was and no other. You stop and think about no other group really does this. It's kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson pointed out that you would never collectively describe all Asian people as yellows. That would sound ridiculous. And so that moving towards a post-white, post-black linguistic dichotomy or linguistic phraseology, I guess you would say, to me would be the more progressive thing to say, like, okay, and they've tried that in the past. They've tried to say African American, European American. It doesn't really catch on, so we get kind of stuck in this, coming back to this thing of white and black is just the shorthand that everybody uses. Anyway, that's what, when we get right down to it, fundamentally, as weird as it sounds, we've got to stop. We've got to, if we want to stop the Ten Commandments from being put up in schools in the future, it remains to be seen. Now, this is going to be challenged in the courts, and we'll see if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. What the Trump Supreme Court, the Trump-loaded Supreme Court, has not, surprisingly, has not given him everything he's wanted all the time. Admirably, they have ruled against him, which gives me a small modicum of hope. Anyway, this will go all the way to the Supreme Court, and they may strike it down. But you've got to understand that the thing that they have, the thing that they have latched onto, that's given them the motivation, is the 15 years or 12 years split between the Obama administration and the Biden administration of liberal activists bopping them on the nose with the stuff that they're trying to get into schools. Here's the real radical idea. Let's not push agendas in school. If we have to do any kind of social conditioning of children in schools, let's do it in a non-dimensional context. Like I was reading a thing, it was a meme. I don't know how true this is, but apparently, I think it's in Denmark, some European school, the kids have to take, the elementary school children have to take a weekly empathy course. And the long-term result of that is that bullying is at its absolute lowest. The lowest it's ever been. And so things like that, a not bullying course, to put this in the current cultural context, there was a movie that came out a few years ago called Bros, which was supposed to be like the first mainstream gay romantic comedy, and it wasn't very good. Critics didn't like it. Audiences weren't interested. Billy Eichner tried to console himself by saying it failed at the box office because of homophobia. No, it didn't fail because of homophobia. It failed because it just wasn't a very good movie. There are great gay romantic comedies out there. I don't know if movies like I don't know if it's acceptable to point to movies like The Birdcage or Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar in this context. Bros was supposed to be like, we're not necessarily the outer extremes of gay culture, but like we're your everyday bros kind of thing. Anyway, side point to all of that, but one of the things that happens in the movie, the movie revolves around the opening of a gay cultural heritage museum. And at the end of the movie, a woman who was conservative in her attitudes about the opening of this museum is now seeing school children going and learning about the history, Harvey Milk and gay civil rights leaders and things like that. And she says, and she realizes, she says, yes, children need to learn this now before the bullying starts. Wait a minute. Not bullying kids for being gay is very important. I was bullied for being gay in school, and I'm not even gay. I've been on the ass end of that because I was bullied by people who were convinced I was gay, irrespective of anything to the contrary. So I've been on the ass end of that. I know what it's like. I've been there in the extreme. And decades of therapy as an adult. Okay, so I'm not downplaying that at all. Anyway, but you have to understand something. What kids need to learn is not to bully. If you teach them to bully, if you teach them not to bully because on the basis of homosexuality, along with the basis of not bullying on the basis of race, on the basis of gender, on the basis of nationality, on the basis of religion, all of those things, if you teach them don't bully because of these things, what they learn is find something socially acceptable to bully about. That's the problem. Instead, you have to foster the positive traits. And I learned about this very, very early on, this fundamental facet of children's nature. I had a theater teacher in high school that was, junior high and high school, that was a tremendous influence on me. He was kind of like my version of that, is it Boy Meets World, where he talks to the old guy, the nice old guy that gives him advice about the life and everything, and I can't think of it. Anyway, he was like my version of that guy. And he pointed out something very important, is when you're working with children, tell them to walk. If you want them to not run, you need to tell them to walk. Because if you tell them don't run, they'll say, then I can skip. They'll start skipping down the hall. They'll start jumping down the hall. No, you tell them to walk. You tell them proactively what you want them to do, not what you don't want them to do. So in that bullying example, you tell them all of these reasons not to bully, but they don't fundamentally learn that not bullying is not acceptable. That bullying is not acceptable. They will instead try to find a reason that is acceptable to bully. So to really get at the heart of the issue, you have to touch their heart. You have to get to the point of empathy, of understanding one another. Now, yes, you will still have conservatives like Ben Shapiro saying, we're not supposed to empathize. Empathy is wrong, okay? And he had his whole thing about why he thought empathy was that you should never empathize with people, and that it's all of that. But that's the basis for it. That's the basis for tolerance, and the basis for acceptance is empathy, is connecting with people, not putting them in a context where you're constantly trying to play whack-a-mole by educating them on not bullying about all of the different reasons that they could think of to bully. And that proactive approach is what liberal-minded people have got to keep in the forefront of their minds, and this is what, this comes from the perspective of someone who wants a socially liberal atmosphere, a tolerant, live and let live, socially liberal, what I like to say left-leaning libertarian atmosphere of I'm okay, you're okay, we're going to find a way to get along. That's what I want to see. And you have to understand that the reason the conservatives keep pushing for things like Christian nationalism and all of that is because fundamentally, when you put them in a position where they have to choose between two loathsome extremes, at the very least, this loathsome extreme over here on the right, why do I keep pointing to the left? This loathsome extreme on the right is, at the very least, offering them structure and stability and the foundational substrates of the existing norm. It demands less of them and promises more to them. And so you have to always understand that. And if you want to move society forward, you've got to learn how to not say fuck you to the people you want to change, because that's not how you do it. All they're going to do is put up the Ten Commandments and say fuck you back.